Winners here. So we've been doing a little series this fall, this winter. How then do we live? And Wayne Miller wrote it, and there's these 4 basic questions that really all spiritual seekers go through in some form or another. And first one is, who am I? And we talked about this for a couple weeks, both who we show up as, how we think, and also our shadow side, the part that we think nobody sees, but we're the only one that thinks that, right? There's nothing we can hide. Last week I talked about what do I love, and really I understand that love is a continuum, that it's important to know what you love, because when you make that commitment to share that energy, to invest that energy, it includes the joy of love, but it also includes grief, because at some point, every relationship will end, whether it's because they leave their physical body. There's losses involved with love. So sometimes we only look at the bright, shiny thing, but it's the whole gamut, the whole broad spectrum that makes love so deep and so meaningful to us. And then that deep question about how shall I live knowing that I'm going to die? It's not a surprise to anybody. We got into this life one way, and we're going to leave it one way. That's all there is to it. And then finally, what is our gift to the family of the earth? So, how will we live knowing that we will die? There's a story, this older couple were in bed. They woke up in the morning, and the husband reached over to take the wife's hand. She goes, "No, don't touch me." He goes, "What do you mean, don't touch me?" She says, "I'm dead, don't touch me." He says, "What do you mean you're dead? We're laying here in bed talking to each other." "Why did you say that?" She goes, "Because I woke up this morning and nothing hurts." You'll understand that someday, maybe. Those of us are a maturing age, we kind of get that. I love the idea that in life we have 2 eyes. One is for watching, one is for weeping, and 2 hands. One is for holding, one is for reaching out. We know that life has this whole gamut of pains, growth opportunities, and joys, and happiness. And there's a great richness to having this variety in life. Eleanor Roosevelt said that the purpose of life is to live it, to taste experience to the utmost, to reach out eagerly and without fear for newer and richer experiences. And so really coming to that acknowledgement that it is the full gamut, the full spectrum of life. It's not that this is life and this isn't because you don't like this part. This part sometimes gives richness to the other part. It's the whole package together. And we know that our life really is on loan, this body that we have. If you go through a cemetery, you know that body served this soul for a time, and then that was it. The body only lasts for so long. It's like we're loaned this to use for a certain amount of time on earth to have this human experience, whatever that might be for us. And it reminds me of a story. This grandmother and her grandson were walking down the beach, and they came across this dead seagull. And the little boy says, why is that seagull dead? And his grandmother said, well, it was that time of his life, and he went to join God in heaven. The little boy looks at his grandmother and said, well, why did God throw him back down? To really get this concept that this body that feels so personal is a loner is really hard for our intellect to get. Our body, our mind just fights against it. And it reminds me, one time when I rented this car, and when I was signing the papers, this is before it was all electronic, and it said number of dents all over the car. And I looked at the car out there, I didn't see it, but when I got closer, there were little tiny dents. It was probably a hailstorm, someplace that had hit it, and I thought, that's fine. The car runs fine. I'm just going to have it for a few days. I was fine with it. It's the same way with our body, whatever shape it is in. This is a loner to us. We're going to let it go at some point. So as we really think about how we'll live our life, knowing that we don't get to keep this thing, and we shouldn't get too attached. Boy, think about that, not being too attached to your body. Even to think about how many times we judge ourselves because of our body. Right? This is a limitation. This doesn't look like I want it to look like. My body is tired and I want to do this, or my body's ready to go and my mind doesn't want to. We really get attached and let the body even control us. And there's time in our life where the body does make decisions for us. Somebody was saying they weren't quite up to coming today, and it just struck me, the body made the decision, you need to rest today, you can't come in. And then it brings us up to the idea about beyond this life. Was there life before this lifetime? Where were we before we were born? Where were we before our parents were born? And then, is there life beyond this? Is there life after death? Those are all questions we think about and talk about. Sometimes you only think about it, it's too scary to talk about it. But those are basic existential questions that we all go through, things that we need to know or want to know. And, we're probably not going to know in this lifetime, if you will. Well, there was this husband and wife that argued about life after death. This was like their favorite argument. They went on for 60 years arguing about this. She believed in life after death, and he didn't. And it was kind of a comfort thing. This was their favorite argument to have. And then one day he dies. And she so believed in life after death, she started going to all these seances. Seance after seance. And finally one time, his voice came through. And she goes, tell me, what's it like? What's heaven like? And he says to her, wow, these beautiful blue skies and green hills. And there's these willing young things with big brown eyes. And she goes, oh, I kind of never thought about heaven like that. And he says, heaven? I'm in Montana. I'm a bull. Oh, we just never know. Another couple was talking about life after death, and the husband's even very deep, and he goes, is there life after death? And his wife says, I just wonder if there's life after dinner. Sometimes by the end of the day, it's like life has just gone out into that other place. But suppose you knew that you only had the rest of this year to live. Kind of like Alice in Wonderland. Off with her head. The end of this year, that's it. Think about what would you do differently. If you look back on your life, the choices you've made, and you knew this was the last segment you're going to have in your life, what would you do differently? Yeah. Irma Bombeck, if you remember her, and you may have heard this story before, she was dying of cancer. Before she died, she wrote this really meaningful poem as if she was answering the question yourself. And she said, if I had to live my life over, I would have talked less and listened more. I would have invited friends over to dinner, even if the carpet was stained and the sofa was faded. I would have eaten popcorn in the good living room and worried much less about the dirt when somebody wanted to light a fire in the fireplace. Oh, do you ever, anybody else hesitant when they want to write all the ashes and stuff? Yeah. I would have taken the time to listen to my grandfather ramble on and on and on about his youth. I would have burned the pink candle sculpted like a rose before it melted in storage. Yeah. I would have cried and laughed less while watching TV and more by watching life. I would have gone to bed when I was sick instead of pretending the earth would go into a holding pattern if I went there for a day. I would never have bought anything just because it was practical, wouldn't show soil, or was guaranteed to last a lifetime. I could hear from the laughter, you're hearing some of these things in your own mind too. We were raised a certain way, to be practical, yada, yada. So there would have been more I love yous, more I'm sorry's, but mostly given another shot at life. I would have seized every minute, looked at it and really seen it, lived it, and never, ever gave it back. It's like that wake-up call. How can we have that wake-up call every day, every moment, to be more aware of this precious thing called life that we get to live? Right now, some of you may know I lost my sister Friday. She was 60, and I'm working on her service and her obituary. And I was thinking about writing your own obituary. There's some things you want to make sure it's included, that you're proud. And there's some things, by the grace of God, would be parts that you'd leave out, right? We have that wide spectrum of life experiences, times that we just were a shiny star and times that we were a diamond, maybe waiting to be polished up to get a little bit brighter in our life. So thinking about our own memorial, I love this guy. He said, I don't want my tombstone to read, he did tolerable stuff for tolerable people because they paid him well. And I thought, how many times, it might be she did tolerable stuff for intolerable people because she wanted them to like her, be the codependent there, right? Or, a lot of times we know that we sell ourselves short from our dreams, from what we could do, what we have the possibilities within us to express. So we know that we co-create our life with our thoughts and our actions, our energy, our love, and so our today is really the cumulative result of all of our yesterdays, whether they're in the obituary or not. And if you think about how will you be remembered, it's been very moving seeing people post on Facebook the memories of my sister. She just had a really, really big heart and would help even as she was going through these health challenges the last 4 years, she would go down to they'd have these food giveaways. They have excess and stuff, and she would pick them up for all these family members. I mean, how she even made it down there, it was just amazing. You know, think about how will you be remembered? What will people think about you? How will you remember your life? If you're laying on your transition bed, ready to leave this body, and you look back and go, oh, how do I feel about what I just did with this loner thing? You know, how am I going on about that? Do you have regrets with the risks that you took? I love this. Was your life plump with experiences or malnourished with taking first steps? Plump with experiences or malnourished from taking those first steps, those things that we hesitate, those things that somehow we'll have time for another day, not the right time yet. And I will tell you, the one thing I've learned in this past couple years is there's never the right time except for now. And I've had, a couple deaths this year, and for my father, who died in December, in September, I hadn't seen him since COVID, and I said, I need to go see him even though I couldn't get a week. I pulled a couple days and went. Wasn't perfect, but I went. And I got to spend this wonderful time with him. The same way with my sister. I went in November. She was having some challenges, and I went. Even though it wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, it wasn't, quote, the right time, but it was the right time. And I got to have that time with her. So looking back at our lives about when we went ahead and did those things that weren't perfect because they were perfect in that moment. Remember Joe Louis, the big boxer back before our time? He said, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. I mean, that about sums it up, right? Everybody wants to go to heaven, nobody wants to die. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says, you may recognize this question, of all the world's wonders, what is the most amazing? And we all came up with a lot of answers for that this morning. It's an amazing world. But the Bhagavad Gita, it says, no man, no matter how many other men or women he sees die around him, believes in his own mortality. None of us can visualize this world without us in it, because the world is seen to us our perception. We can see other people die, but somehow we feel that we're immortal. Maybe more immortal when we were teenagers than we might be later on, but there's that sense we just cannot believe that we're going to continue living. Beyond our comprehension, really seriously beyond our comprehension. So, knowing that we're not going to live forever, how are we going to live our life? That's a big question. And Joan Borisenko, in her book, Guilt is a Teacher, Love is the Answer. Isn't that great? Guilt is a teacher, love is the answer. She wrote, illumined spiritual teachers die of heart disease and cancer like the rest of us, while cantankerous pessimists who smoke cigarettes and eat lots of hamburgers sometimes live to be 100. And all of us, no matter how many bean sprouts we eat, miles we run, affirmations we say, hours we meditate, or as hard we pray, are all going to die sometime. The question is, how are we going to live? How are we going to live? That is really the big question. How are we going to take this loner and make the most of it to make our hearts sing, if you will? So what are we waiting for? The IPI, the illusion of physical immortality. We all have that disease, this illusion of physical immortality. And when we have this illusion, here's what we do. It gives us permission to be sloppy in our thinking, sloppy in our actions. It's like we don't have to have a laser focus. We just kind of let it out, kind of willy-nilly as we're going on. How about, I always have time to do it. We believe there's always time to do it. That is that illusion of physical immortality, that belief. When really all we have is right now. I once heard that all any of us have in this moment is 6 minutes. That's how long it takes to die, for the body to shut down. All of us right now have 6 minutes. Whoa, what would you do? Be glad that you're with this loving group that's very supportive and comforting, if you will. Do you remember Robert Schuller, the Crystal Cathedral? I have another sister who's madly in love with him, even though he's dead. She thinks he's the sexiest man alive. And he did great work, and he was a very busy man. And one time he was on his book tour, been away from home for quite a few weeks. And when he got back in to the church, the first thing on his list was a lunch with a donor. They'd done a fundraiser for the church, lunch with a minister. And then he heard that a little girl had won the bidding. And she spent all of her money, $500, to have lunch with him. And then he found out it was his daughter. What do we value? What do we value? So, boy, as we look at how are we going to live, are we focusing our life on what really matters to us? Are we focusing our life on those things we love, the values that we hold dear to ourselves? Is that where we're investing our energy? Really, it's what's sacred to us. What is sacred to us? And you may have heard this story before and probably forgot about it, because when you first hear it, it's so impactful. There's this man who liked shortwave radio. And he was on the radio one night, and this younger man, Tom, came on. And Tom was probably about 30, had a couple young kids, and he was bemoaning the fact that because he had to work so many hours to make ends meet, he had missed his daughter's dance recital. Well, the man that liked to be on shortwave, he was in his 70s, and he said to Tom, a number of years ago, I was 55, 20 years ago, I figured life expectancy is averaging 75. He said, what's my favorite day of the week? And he said, Saturday. He said, so I did the math and counted up how many Saturdays were left for me in my life. And I figured it was about 1,000. I went out toy store to toy store, about 1,000 marbles, and put them in a jar. And every Saturday I took one marble out. And I made sure I did something fun that day. And as those marbles went down, it reminded me of how much of life is left. He said, and today, I'm taking out the last marble. He said, I probably got a few more Saturdays left, but it's helped keep me so focused. And the man was just so impressed with this. He got off the phone. He said to his wife, get out of bed. I'm taking you out to breakfast. She goes, what's going on? She goes, I'll explain to you, but we need to stop along the way and get some marbles. Put them in there. But can you see that visual of just seeing a measurement of how much life that you may have left in that? So how will we live knowing that we will die? We really determine what our life is like by the choices that we make. How do we expel our time, our money, our energy? Where do we invest? Where do we invest? And spiritual economics, good old Eric Butterworth, is that we spend it on savoring life. That whatever we invest in should be that we get the juiciness of life, the bountifulness of life, the joy of life. All those experiences that lets us know that we are alive. So we're going to take a little time to go into meditation with that. I invite you to take a deep breath, because these loner vehicles just love to breathe, right? We take a deep breath and allow our eyes to close and to settle in this moment. Allow ourselves to become aware of this loner vehicle that we have. And to really say thank you, body. To really appreciate what this loner allows us to do. To walk, to sleep, to smell, to touch, to breathe. As we breathe in, feeling all those loner organs relishing in the oxygen, in the freedom to vibrate with health and wholeness, and to release anything that is not supporting this loner, to allow it to be released with ease and grace, allowing that energy to transform into that which supports life. Being ever so conscious of our presence. being ever so aware of the sacredness of this fleeting moment, becoming ever so aware of the privilege of seeing each other's faces, of hearing the voices of others around us, of experiencing the cycles of life. Allow these words to be the words of your own heart. I am God life. I live fully in the moment, tasting the divine in the here and now. I celebrate the sacred life, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 moment at a time, 1 breath at a time. And it is glorious. And so it is. Amen.